IVM.
Hey everybody, welcome to another awesome week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Paytm Money. So we had a really interesting week on the network. Definitely check out some of the shows that came out there. We had interesting episodes on Cyrus Says, Advertising is Dead, Filter Coffee Podcast, Glass Station Adulthood, Mr. and Mrs. Binge Watch, Besa Vesa. All of these shows had some really, really cool guests on, and there were some really good episodes out there. Do check them out. I'm sure you'll enjoy them. And with that, let's get you on with your show.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Edgerton Sledges Cricket Podcast. This is DJ, your host for the week, and I've got with me an extremely special guest. Some would say a cricket legend, a folk hero, the hero that our times need when we're all in Corona lockdown still while we record. I have got with me Rob Moody. Some of you actually may know him a little bit better by his YouTube moniker or his Twitter moniker, and that's Is it Robelinda too, or is it Robelinda too? Rob, welcome to the Edgerton Sledges Cricket Podcast. And maybe I've got the pronunciation of your YouTube handle wrong.
Yeah, thanks for having me, DJ. You got it right the first time. I've been asked many times how you actually pronounce it, but it's funny because I've never had to until people have asked me about it. In my day-to-day life, no one would say to me, how do you pronounce your YouTube channel name? So I would figure that I would pronounce it as Robelinda just to make sure that the Belinda part is highlighted, just so I don't get in trouble, because obviously that's my better half's name. So Robelinda seems fine to me, but Robelinda too sounds fine too. So there's no preference from my end. It's a name that exists in print only, online, on the YouTube channel. So I'm happy for whatever anyone wants to say it as.
Absolutely. And Rob, can I just ask you whether you put that name up before she said yes? Because that would have been a pretty confident move.
Yeah, well, the name originated from a email account that myself and Belinda made in very early 2000, probably February 2000. We got our first internet connection and we made a joint email address, and without even thinking about it, like I just thought, let's just do. I actually typed Rob and Belinda, and I thought, hang on, I can merge those two names, and that's how it started. So it wasn't anything I gave any thought about to how anyone would be thinking about it in 20 years' time, because that's just crazy. That's crazy.
It's fantastic. It's cricket love and a dial-up connection. That's what the name of the autobiography is going to be.
It literally was dial-up. It was a dial-up connection. It took ages. It did all the noises, all that sort of noise. That's what it was. Yeah, pretty funny.
Yeah, the people that listen to the show that don't even know what dial-up is. So I obviously appreciate that, having grown up through the 90s and the 2000s. But there will be people on the show that know nothing but super fast fiber broadband at 5G speeds or whatever we've got now. But Rob, let's talk through your YouTube channel. Firstly, how many cricket videos have you got on your YouTube channel? How many thousands of cricket videos have you got on there?
I've never actually counted, but if I click on it right now, it tells me it's actually really hard to find out how many you've got, but it's about 2,600, which I think is actually less than what there is, but there's about 1,000 that's been terminated or blocked worldwide over the last 10 years. But yeah, at the moment there's active about 2,500, 600, something like that.
Right, so let's get straight into that. I mean, so you've lost 1,000 videos that you've uploaded previously. There was a little bit of a scare recently where I think you got a strike from YouTube, because obviously we follow you on Twitter, and that came out. And so tell us how it's been. I mean, I'm a lawyer, so I'm pretty interested in how this all works and how much trouble you've been given by YouTube and the authorities for putting up what is basically clips of cricket videos, which you recorded over, I think, started in the 1980s sometime on VHS. Another thing that I, of course, remember, but lots of people won't even know what a cassette is.
Yeah, well, I think it's something that has been a bit of an evolution in terms of copyright enforcement as the internet age has progressed since it started. Obviously, when YouTube started in the mid-2000s, there wasn't much to see for the first few years. I started uploading around late 2009, 2010, and I didn't even give a thought to what was copyrighted or what wasn't, because there seemed to be just a random selection of videos on YouTube. There wasn't anything on there that seemed important, or it was just heaps of cat videos and random stuff. So when I started uploading, it was literally purely just for my friends interstate and online, and it was happened pretty quickly that I got in trouble. But it soon became obvious that the only things that were a problem were videos of current matches at the time or recent matches at the time. It seemed very random at the time. I mean, I'm sure I'll say that word a lot, random, but it really was at the time. I was getting copyright notices from all the cricket boards and all sorts of copyright holders, but there didn't seem to be any sort of common theme. It all seemed very bizarre. Like the England Cricket Board sent me a copyright notice of a Shane Watson LBW against Bangladesh in Australia. And
wow.
I thought, well, how can that even be possible? Like, there wasn't a broadcast in England. And I reached out to them and they replied back. And they said there's something in our algorithm or something with the copyright identification software that pinpointed this exact video. We can't explain. And I thought, well, that's pretty funny, but, thank goodness it wasn't a very important video that I'd spent a long time making, but didn't seem very great. So over the last decade, it's something that the boards and the copyright holders themselves have been, I think, slow to move on. But for me, having been around for so long now, obviously I'm pretty aware of what the unwritten rules are with uploading cricket footage. I rarely get in trouble these days, aside from obviously just recently with the ICC opening their archives and clamping down on channels that show ICC event footage, which is absolutely their right, and they own the footage. So, but thankfully, it's not something that my channel is really known for. So that's fine for me.
Yeah, awesome. And you've also inspired, let's say, others. There's someone called Desi Robelinda that does Indian cricket videos, which is just absolutely fantastic. I mean, for you to have started that as a passion project and then for other people to be doing the same thing, I mean, I think that's just absolutely amazing. And just to be clear for our listeners, Rob, you don't run adverts on your YouTube channel, right?
No.
Just so... No, so you're not making any money off this. You're just doing it purely for the passion of the game, right?
Yeah, I've never made a single cent ever. It's actually illegal in this country to do that anyway. I mean, the process of getting your channel monetized in this country means that YouTube has to actually do a verification on your channel to make sure that the content you're uploading and wanting to monetize is actually your own footage. So even if I wanted to, legally I couldn't anyway. So yeah, the whole channel is obviously free. I've got absolutely no idea what it's like for other countries with their legal system with monetizing videos, but certainly in this country, there is no chance at all for me to monetize my channel, which is perfectly fine for me because I never would have even thought of it anyway. It's purely been something that's just for fun and to connect with other cricket fans around the world. especially right now because everyone's in lockdown. Here in Australia, we're in lockdown. We can't leave our houses to go anywhere. So it's, something that was created a long time ago, but now is serving a nice purpose now where I get to connect with fans where we're all at home and just wanting to see cricket, of which there is none to see live.
Absolutely. And I think the legend of Robelinda has only grown during this period of lockdown. So I'm very pleased about that. And congratulations on doing such an amazing job for cricket fans all over the world. I think, I don't think I'm stretching it to say that you have been a lifesaver in these times, honestly. It was ages ago that I think I may have seen your first video. And you see that little thing on the right-hand side, and or the left-hand side. What is Robelinda? I don't know. Maybe it's a channel of some kind. I didn't know. And here we are, speaking to each other. Which you're a celebrity, man. I'm loving this. It's absolutely amazing.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah, it is great. So Rob, when we actually did a few episodes ago. I had a chat with a friend of mine, and he recommended 10 must-watch YouTube videos, right? And the second one on that list was the 23 funniest Inzamam run-out, which is 23 minutes of Inzamam not only running himself out, but running his partners out, right? Yeah. And that's one of your most watched videos, I think. Yep. So, we reached out and you kindly agreed to come on the show, which was lovely of you. But when I was putting the show together, I thought, what should we talk about? I mean, we're called Edges and Sledges. And what better to talk about than sledging videos? Because I think one of my biggest searches on YouTube before I started this podcast, etc., was literally just cricket fights or sledging videos, or Watson being elbowed by Gambhir, or Warner getting into a fight with someone. I mean, the Kieran Pollard and Mitchell Stark. And it seems to involve a lot of Australians. So I figured who better to talk us through the top sledging videos on the internet than Robelinda himself. So, Rob, go for it, man. I mean, tell us, I know you put a tweet out, so maybe we can go through your top sledging videos.
Yeah, well, I put a tweet out a couple of hours ago and got a crazy amount of responses. Obviously, one of the things that fans seem to like more than anything is controversy. Umpiring controversy and obviously sledging controversies. There's obviously a few big ones that keep coming up all the time. Glenn McGrath versus Sarwan, and Shane Warne and Marlon Samuels in the Big Bash at the MCG a few years ago.
Oh, that's the shirt grabbing one.
Yeah.
Yep. I watched that a few times.
Yeah, I was laughing at home. When that was on, I thought, this is hilarious. It's typical Shane Warne sort of stuff. But there's been so many. Dennis Lilly and Meandad at Perth in 81, 82, and there's so many. But from my point of view, they're all just funny because you see them on TV and they're just sportsmen that you don't know. You're just watching cricket and you see these incidents that happen, and there's people read more into it than what there is sometimes. But from my point of view, it all just seems like just drama on TV, and the players themselves seem to get over it pretty quickly for the most part. There's a few funny ones. Growing up as a kid, watching Australia, West Indies, that seemed to be genuinely hostile, especially guys like Gordon Greenidge versus Merv Hughes and Jeff Lawson in particular. And I know those guys have carried that feud, beyond their playing careers. And that's when you know that it's serious. They really didn't get on very well at all. So then you go back and look at those incidents on video, and you think, okay, that was actually, compare that to other instances that you see, and you think, okay, well, does Stuart Broad really hate David Warner or something as much as Gordon Greenidge doesn't like Merv Hughes or Jeff Lawson? So, yeah, it's funny to get a different insight every now and again to some of the older incidents that you've seen on TV.
So I'm just looking through a list we actually have on our blog of the India versus Australia fight, sledges, tantrums, and bad behavior. So I think we put this up a little while ago.
Yeah.
And the first one on it is Harbhajan versus Ponting. Do you remember the 17-year-old Harbhajan giving Ricky Ponting a send-off in Sharjah?
Yeah, 1998. Was the first
absolutely,
time.
Absolutely. 1998
Yep.
It is.
Yeah, 1998.
And Ponting kind of... Do you remember him taking a step towards Harbhajan?
Yeah, so Harbhajan dismissed him and Ponting was walking off, and Harbhajan obviously said something.
A 17-year-old Harbhajan, stick thin.
It was young. It was prior to his Test debut. It was early in 98, like March 98. April.
Yeah, this is the Coca-Cola Cup, the famous Desert Storm series.
Yep.
For Indian fans, of course, not so much fun for Australian fans, but
yeah, not so much. But it was fun enough. I mean, it was a pretty awesome series. I mean, imagine if they replayed that series in full right now. I mean, it would be incredible for Australian fans and Indian fans because how awesome were the matches? I mean,
absolutely, and New Zealand as well. New Zealand as well.
Yeah, they were. I mean, from memory, Australia pretty much thrashed New Zealand in that tournament. But it was the India-Australia matches which were the highlight, especially the last two. And even though Australia won the match before the final, it was obviously dominated by Tendulkar making enough runs to get India into the final. But, yeah, Harbhajan versus Ponting, that was pretty interesting.
Pretty feisty characters.
Yeah, both players were pretty. I mean, Ponting was actually a few months away from the worst time of his career where he got suspended by Cricket Australia late in 1998 for getting really drunk. The famous story, getting really drunk at the Beefsteak and Bourbon nightclub in Sydney and getting a black eye and being suspended temporarily from the one-day team in late 98. But, yeah, you could tell early on that he was up for the fight. You know, there was all the talk about Ponting being from Tasmania and everything and, you know, a street fighter sort of guy, and Harbhajan was the same sort of guy, you know. And, yeah, the incident in Sharjah probably wasn't as big here, but it became known over the years as being an incident that started something that maybe a lot of people didn't see quite early on, but as it moved towards 2001, it had a bit more meaning because you didn't really know the behind the scenes talk that was going on between the players, and clearly there was something going on between Harbhajan and Ponting in 98, and yeah, both of them were up for the fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about being up for the fight, so the next one I wanted to speak to you about is actually Sachin versus McGrath in Nairobi in 2000. Now, is that one that you remember? It was the first time as a 15-year-old that I saw Sachin drop an F-bomb, and it blew our minds, honestly. I mean, I don't know what happened that day.
Yeah, well, again, Australian fans hadn't seen much of Tendulkar and McGrath. The first time Sachin played McGrath was in 1994 Australasian Cup in Sharjah, and Glenn McGrath got Tendulkar out on a pull shot caught by Mark Taylor at short mid wicket. And then we didn't see those two again until Australia toured India in 96 for the one-off test, which Tendulkar was dismissed by McGrath again.
Mm-hmm.
And then McGrath missed the 98 tour of India where Tendulkar dominated. McGrath was injured. Then, obviously, the famous 99-2000 Test series in Australia where...
Lots of material there for your umpiring howlers.
Plenty. And so by the time... actually, within that tour to Australia, there was also Shoaib Akhtar and Abdul Razak versus Tendulkar in the one-day series. And that was a bit of a sideshow to the McGrath thing. But by the time that series finished in early 2000. Later that year, they went to Nairobi, and the whole tournament was still a new thing for fans to deal with. People weren't really sure what it was because the previous Champions Trophy was a knockout tournament, and obviously India beat Australia in that as well. Tindall got 140 something.
I think 141, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah. And obviously it was the tail end of him just smashing the hell out of Australia for months on end in early 98. 2000, people still weren't quite sure what the tournament was, but yeah, obviously he just decided that that's it. He's a bit older now. He's been playing McGrath for 6 years. Obviously went to town on him, hit a huge pull shot out of the ground. It was a pretty awesome match, really. I mean, it was, India put up a good total. Australia chased well, lost kind of easily in the end. I recall Brett Lee hitting a huge six into someone's car outside the ground. Yeah, but certainly early on in the match, it was all on. I mean, Tendulkar.
Yeah, it was a great match. It was a great match. Yeah, it was Yuvraj Singh's first innings.
Yep.
I think he got 84. Zahir Khan was making his debut. He got Steve Waugh, I think, of a Yorker, a low full toss.
Yep, correct.
My memory of this, and I know we're talking about sledging, but of course I've got to go on a tangent, is actually Venkatesh Prasad hitting a last ball six when all he needed to do was block and make sure India didn't get bowled out to have Australia docked some overs. And Venki comes out and he's got no batting ability and just hits the last ball for six. It just blew my mind. It's just like, what's going on?
But, that was a funny couple of years for Indian tailenders hitting sixes. There's a famous one at Lords that everyone talks about, Ashish Nehra hitting a six at the end of the innings while Agarkar was hitting 100. And the Prasad six, bizarre shot.
You get some pretty good odds on him not hitting
on my channel. Ian Harvey was the bowler. It was a slower ball, and smashed it over long off for a six.
Absolutely incredible. Rob, moving on to 2001, and of course this was the famous series that we had against between India and Australia. It was a pity. I was speaking to somebody earlier that it was a pity it was a 3-match series and not a full 5-match series. I mean, imagine the 2001 series having 5 games. It would have just been absolutely amazing. But I mean, we live with what we get. But the first test match in that series had quite a fiery incident between Slater and Dravid and some finger wagging at umpires and things. So do you remember that one?
Oh, of course I do, yeah. It was. I always thought that the catch was out, but the replays were inconclusive, as often happens. Still, 20 years later, I mean, the umpire at the time, the third umpire, doesn't seem to always have the conclusive evidence. I mean, we saw the Lords test last year when on day 5, the famous Labuschagne dismissal where Joe Wilson gave it out and it clearly bounced, but he didn't have that angle available to him. By the time Labuschagne got back to the dressing room, the angle came on the TV and it was clearly not out. It was pretty much exactly the same back in 2001. I mean, there just wasn't the angles available, and players always think they've caught it. Obviously, the ones that don't think they've caught it are generally pretty honest, but the ones who genuinely think they have caught it obviously think it's out, but doesn't mean it is out. But there was a lot of third umpire controversy in that series, not just that catch. Obviously, the Harbhajan hat-trick with the Shane Warne dismissal also. But, I mean, the Slater incident was not really 100% related to just that particular dismissal. He was obviously going through personal turmoil at the time. I don't think he would think any different of it now. I read his autobiography. He seemed pretty genuinely apologetic about that particular incident, going through a divorce at the time and everything. So, you can't always read into it exactly what you see on the TV.
Absolutely agree. And it's interesting you bring up the personal angle to this because, of course, the Sarwan incident that you mentioned with McGrath was also part of the larger personal issue that McGrath was going through. Then his wife was ill and Sarwan said something about her, of course, in which everybody knows. And because
of course,
McGrath asked him what Brian Lara's dick or cock tastes like, and he goes, "Ask your wife." And I mean, it triggered McGrath. Yeah, it's a great comeback, but it completely triggered him, and it wasn't because of what he said. Because I mean, of course, Edo Brandes had said something like that before as well, but it triggered McGrath, and you saw the physical response that came out of it, right? And as you said, it's not always what you see on the television because it's a horrible look for cricket. It's entertaining for the fans, of course, but it was something he was going through personally, and it made him lose his rag. And it's a very important point that you made, that it's not always gamesmanship and sportsmanship and getting an edge, but it's sometimes just emotions boiling over, and it has nothing to do with what's going on the field. So great point, and I think
people
very well
are just
made.
People, people are just people. I mean, and they're young. I mean, they're not like they're 40 years old and super experienced. They're mid-20s, late 20s, early 30s. I mean, no one can say they know exactly what they're doing at that period of their life and everything. So, you're still evolving as a person at that time. So being in a high-pressure sport, professional situation and going through, a pretty horrible time. I'm not excusing the behaviour, obviously, but I'm no spokesman for the Australian cricket team or any sportsman. But I think fans are often really quick to judge, and especially when they may not understand the whole situation or may not want to understand the whole situation. I mean, there's a lot of talk on social media and internet between countries and everything. I mean, it's diabolical on my social media most of the time. I tend to not judge too harshly, not just the Aussies, but just sportsmen in general. They're just people. I mean, none of us have to be faced with a high pressure situation at all. I mean, I certainly don't. It would seem very hypocritical of me to be judging anyone in that situation where, I have no really right to judge.
Absolutely right. And so let's move on to some wicket keepers, because they are the ones that are notorious for sledging. And I mean, there's a few good ones out there, and I know your tweet got a few great responses to it. So maybe you can tell us your favorite memories of kind of clever sledging by wicket keepers. I know there's some by Sangha against Sean Pollock when he comes out to bat in the World Cup game in 2003, which I just found fascinating.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's great.
Incredible.
Well, especially since that was the exact match where South Africa got kicked out. That was the exact match.
It's Sanga's South African accent as well, which really gets me, because he's telling Sean Pollock that it's the weight of all these expectations and everyone's depending on Sean.
Yeah, and in the end he couldn't count and they got kicked out.
No, he couldn't.
That was a great one.
And then there's, of course, there was the Gilchrist sledge to Mohammad Kaif, because Gilchrist was a walker, wasn't he? He walked in the World Cup semi-final. And I think it was Mumbai 2004 where Kaif has edged one to the keeper and Gilchrist goes up. The umpire doesn't give it out. And I think he says, "The whole world is watching, champ." And I thought that was a great look. But any other interesting ones by keepers? Of course, we had the Rishabh Pant versus Tim Payne show that went on last year with the babysitter chat and all of that stuff. So, any other good memories?
Yeah, well, growing up, Ian Healy was pretty vocal, but back in the 80s and 90s, it wasn't always clear on the telecasts, what was going on. But 1991, West Indies hosted Australia Test Series, and that was the most volatile series I've ever seen in my life. Man, that was physical, and yeah, it was verbal, it was physical, lots of injuries on both sides. And Gordon Greenidge, Ian Healy, Desmond Haynes, Gus Logie. There was a lot of sledging. Merv Hughes. It was pretty cool to see on TV. But in the last couple of years, since Channel 9 lost the cricket rights to Channel 7, they made an effort to make sure the stump mics were nice and clear and loud for the viewers at home. And everyone's seen over the last few years the Rishabh Pant and Payne commentary, which is hilarious. And
it's just
you knew
comedy.
it was
it's just
harmless.
Pure comedy gold.
Yeah, you knew it was harmless. And that's what you want. You want the harmless banter. It's what we've all experienced. I played club cricket here in Australia. I got sledged crazy amount, and you just laugh at it. How can you not? It isn't like someone's got a knife to your throat in the middle. It's just people saying rubbish, So,
what's the best sledge you've got at club cricket, Rob? Come on, tell us. What's the funniest one? Are there any funny ones, or is it just abuse?
It was just abuse. It was just flat out abuse. Most Aussies will tell you club cricket in Australia, the cricketers aren't part of Mensa. They're just absolutely diabolically bad abuse sledges. And, I remember once I walked out to bat and it was a spinner bowling, and the keeper said, "This guy hasn't seen his dick yet. Let's make sure he never sees it. Aim for it," all this sort of stuff. And I thought, how funny is this?
Wow. that is very poor.
I thought, what are you going to do?
Weren't you trying to get him out? It's too high to get an LBW, surely.
I just laughed. And it was funny because the wicketkeeper was actually the one who drove me home from the match. But she just didn't care. It was whatever. It was like a competition on the ground to see who could say the funniest things. And you kind of get that feeling with the international players when they know that their sledges are being telecast. They're not going to say anything really bad. They just say funny stuff, just dumb things. They're cricketers, they're sportsmen, they just say dumb stuff. So, yeah, I don't read too much into it. Sportsmen are probably best left to just play the game rather than open their mouths most of the time.
Absolutely. So, of course, there was also the chat between Tim Payne and Murali Vijay last year, which was about Kohli, the captain. I know he's your captain, but you can't like him as a bloke. Now, no podcast on cricket sledging would be complete without talking about Virat Kohli.
Yeah, well, that was pretty funny.
It was, because it got Murali out a couple of balls later. I think he got bowled by Nathan Lyon, didn't he?
Yeah, who knows whether that had anything to do with it, but it was pretty funny anyway. From an Aussie perspective, having seen the amazing documentary on Amazon Prime, the test, we've all had an insight into how the team thinks and talks and operates, and you can see some of the reasoning why Tim Payne was saying those things. He maybe had picked up on a few things that maybe the team wasn't as close-knit as people thought, and that was interesting banter. Maybe it worked.
Maybe it did, and Australia did win that test match at Perth, so it seemed to all be going fine. Kohli and Payne, of course, had faced off. It was chest to chest. It was Australian captain versus Indian. It was all great. It was just box office viewing, wasn't it? It was just the Australian summer had come alive. But there were some other recent sledging incidents, and we spoke to Kesrick Williams a few episodes ago. It was actually quite a few episodes ago. And we've all heard the Virat Kohli side of that chat, of course, and it's he got me out in the West Indies 2 years ago, and he signed his notebook. So I wanted to sign my notebook when I got some runs off him. And Kesrick actually had nothing but the utmost respect for Virat Kohli, the player and the batsman, and he absolutely loves the guy. So, as you said, it's not a personal thing. It happens in the heat of the moment. No. The guy's celebrating, but the great players know that they're not just batting to score runs. Virat knows he's there to entertain, so there's no reason for him to be signing his imaginary notebook after hitting a 4 against a bowler. But I mean, it's literally just box office stuff. And he's been doing it pretty much his whole life. His first 100 in Adelaide, I think, in the 2011 tour against the Aussies, the first Test 100, came after an absolute barrage from the Aussies. After he nearly got himself run out on 99, right? And he'd flipped the crowd off. And I mean, it's just great stuff.
Everyone loves that stuff, and Virat didn't take too long to become a bit of a public enemy in Australia, but now that everyone knows him so well, he was absolutely going to do that straight away. I mean, that was his game coming here, I remember actually on day one of that test, I'd seen Virat make a century in India in the one-day series in 2009. I think it was a rained-out one-day series, and he got 100 in the only one-dayer on that series. I'm pretty sure it was his first one-day 100 against Australia, and I could be wrong. But there was so much talk about Kohli, and when he made the 100 in Adelaide, he was almost run out on 99. But then a few years later, when he came back to Australia in 2014, he made the 200s at Adelaide in the first test. There was this huge talk in the media about how amazing he is. He's better than Tendulkar and all this sort of stuff. And he made 400s that series. It was awesome.
Yeah, he got hit first ball on the badge by
Johnson.
By Mitch Johnson that series, and everyone went up to check if he was okay. He just kind of shrugged everyone off, quite Marnus Labuschagne like in some ways.
Yes.
Just bouncing back up, and so Rob, tell us who in your opinion is the best sledger in the Australian team at the moment? Do you see Smith sledging? I don't see him sledging. I think he's too much of a nerd for that.
I don't see him sledging. Well, all that we hear on TV is just lots of banter between sort of Payne and Labuschagne around the bat with the spinners bowling. But obviously there's been a bit of a backlash against the Aussies last few years since the sandpaper rubbish. But there doesn't seem to be any huge sledges. Maybe Matthew Wade, but then again, he may not play another test given his recent form. And whenever the next test match is, whenever the next cricket match in the world is, who knows? But Wade and Payne seem to be the sledging guys in the side. I don't hear much from maybe Warner, but I didn't hear much from Warner in the Ashes. I wonder why.
Yeah. I wonder why. 61 top. He was shouting a little bit after he scored his 61 at Headingley. Yeah. There were a few pumps to the crowd, and after taking those fantastic catches, but he wasn't quite the Warner of old. But the other guys I wanted to talk to you a little bit about are the Kiwis now. So they've taken on this halo of being the nice guys of cricket and all of that. But one of the responses to your tweet asking for sledging videos was the 2011 World Cup where Faf du Plessis just run AB de Villiers out in the quarterfinals, and Kyle Mills comes on and gives Faf gives him a mouthful. And Kyle Mills isn't even playing. He's the water boy that game. So how have these guys completely turned themselves around? Was it the Grant Elliott gesture to Dale Steyn? Is it Kane Williamson having taken over? Because the Kiwis were no saints. I mean, we had Craig McMillan on the show, and he got into a few kerfuffles in his time. We've obviously seen Danny Morrison and those guys have a bit of a sledge as well. Yep. So how have they now become the nice guys of cricket? Because for a long time they wanted to be the mini Australia.
Yeah, well, I remember South Africa toured New Zealand in 2004, early 2004, and Stephen Fleming was the captain of New Zealand and Graham Smith was captain of South Africa. And at the toss and the interview with the commentators, Stephen Fleming would pretend to not know Graham Smith's name, and that was bizarre. And it really got to Graham Smith. And that was back in 2004. That was really bizarre because they would ask him, about Graham Smith, and Stephen Fleming would say, "Oh, who? I'm not sure who the captain is." And it was really weird stuff. And it was great because he was really trying to get under his skin because Graham Smith was new to captaincy and Fleming had been captain for, 3 or 4 years? Easy by then. Graham Smith took over less than 12 months before as a young player after the 2003 World Cup. And, South Africa got beaten in that series. And, after that was for us Aussies, it was hilarious. It was similar to Ganguly and Steve Waugh at the toss in 2001 after the Test series, where Ganguly, flung the coin away and just told Steve Waugh what it was, and Steve Waugh wasn't having any part of it. And Ganguly coming out late to the toss, those sort of tactics. So
he still claims. Cool. I read his autobiography.
Yeah,
I read Ganguly's autobiography. He still claims that he left his blazer behind, so he just went back to get it.
Yeah,
it's really
pretty funny. Pretty funny. It was amusing at the time, and the footage that I've put up on my channel is really funny because you can see Steve Waugh just fuming, his steam coming out his ears. He's just not accepting it at all. New Zealand the same, mate. For me, going back to 2004 with Graham Smith, being completely disrespected at the toss by Stephen Fleming. I thought that was pretty interesting. So they, as a smaller test nation, they've got to find any weakness they can find in the opposition. They've got to make use of it. So as most of the smaller nations do. I mean, there's. That's fine in my book.
And also sometimes sledging actually brings out the best in players, doesn't it? I mean, of course, we've spoken about Kohli. He seems to thrive on sledging and getting into the battle. But the other one that I remember is Yuvraj Singh. And this is the 2007 World Cup, where World Cup being the T20 World Cup, of course. And Flintoff's had a go at him. Flintoff, who isn't bowling at that stage, has had a go at him. And the next over, he's on strike. And a 20-year-old Stuart Broad, looking a lot like Draco Malfoy from the Harry Potter series, has the white ball in his hand. And I mean, we all know what happened. I'm sure you've got that one up on your channel, the 6 sixes in the T20 World Cup, surely.
Yeah, I actually don't have it up because the BCCI took it down.
That is... Oh, damn.
But some others have got it up anyway. But obviously that was classic. It's classic.
Yeah, I mean, you just love it when it kind of backfires, doesn't it? Where the other one that comes to mind, and this is one of my co-podcasters says this is the last video he wants to see before he dies. And it's so if he's on his deathbed, this is what we are to show him. And it's the Venkatesh Prasad Amir Sohail video, where they're going great guns. They're winning that World Cup quarterfinal, and the adrenaline's pumping, and Pakistan smashing it everywhere. Anwar and Sohail have got off to a great start. This bowler Venkatesh Prasad, nobody really knows who he is. He's coming to play the World Cup, and he gets he gets thrashed through the covers for a 4. I mean, it's a great shot. You can't put a too fine a spin on it, right? It's a great shot. And then Sohail goes out and points his bat to the boundary, says, "I'm going to hit you there."
Yeah.
I mean, it's a boss move, man. If it comes off, that is a boss move. That's kind of like Brian Lara-esque. I'm going to hit it through that gap there, which I think he told Gilchrist, right? I'm going to hit it through that gap there. Keeps hitting it through that gap. It's just, but then that's Brian Lara, who's a genius. This is Amir Sohail. Next ball, anticipating a short one, perhaps, he goes back and has Venkatesh Prasad just pitches it up because I'm not sure he really had a quick bounce in him, to be honest. And the off stump goes for a walk, and he's just like, what the hell has just happened? It's changed the India-Pakistan World Cup dynamics forever. It literally was, because until then, we used to lose a lot of games to Pakistan. Maybe not in the World Cup, because we'd only played them in the 92 World Cup and won that. But there were a lot of games we used to lose to Pakistan. But that moment, I think, just changed all of that. So it's great to see when it comes off. It's great to see when it backfires as well. Any other things you can think of kind of like that?
Well, for us Aussie viewers, that 96 World Cup, I mean, we didn't even get the non-Australia matches telecast here. I mean, we got the semi-final against Sri Lanka, India-Sri Lanka, which I'm sure Indians will want to forget. But
that's been deleted. Doesn't exist.
Yeah, deleted, didn't happen.
It's been taken down by the BCCI.
Well, it's funny because I uploaded that, and that's still up.
Yeah.
So that doesn't make sense at all. But the quarterfinal, we didn't get that at all telecast, and a lot of us Aussies were wondering. But yeah, the next day we got highlights, and yeah, we thought, oh my God, like that crazy over where Waqar Younis just got smashed. It was awesome. Yeah, we thought, wow, this is the first real India-Pakistan match we've seen aside from the 92 World Cup match, which was, halfway through the World Cup at the SCG. We all remember that for the Java Miandad
kangaroo
business.
Hop.
Yeah.
I wish Moray just stumped him. I mean, when he was in the air, it was a pretty good jump, actually.
Yeah, it
taking
was.
the bails off.
Most of us, I was pretty young at the time. I mean, 92. I mean, I was 14. So I was just thinking, what are these guys doing? I mean, I didn't understand the rivalry at that point. And the matches weren't telecast as well as they are over the last, say, 15 years. Now, all of India gets, whenever India plays Pakistan, it's televised everywhere. Whereas back then, it kind of wasn't. And before that, even in the 80s. So, yeah. And not only the World Cup, but the Champions Trophy, the England won. I don't remember when that was. When was that?
2017.
17, yeah.
Yeah, that's the one we've deleted as well, because India's lost that.
Yeah, I mean, that was pretty funny. But at least, for us Aussie, we're just thinking, man, these guys are crazy. There's just such insane, especially in England, the crowds for India, Pakistan, and England are the best you can get anywhere to watch.
Oh, you can't get a ticket to those games. You can't get a ticket to those games. It's thousands of pounds. It's literally thousands of pounds. Oh. Train tickets, no hotels, no match tickets. It's thousands and thousands of pounds. I mean, it's insane. It's absolutely insane.
I can't fathom that at all. That's crazy.
But Rob, I wanted to speak to you about the West Indies Australia games that you mentioned. So you mentioned a horrible, a quite fractious series in 1991. Is that the series where Curtly Ambrose and Steve Waugh faced off, or was that a later series?
It was later. That was
it
95. Yeah, it was early 95. Was the world-changing Test series in the West Indies, but the series leading up to that, was so horrendous for Aussie fans, especially 91. And then the West Indies coming here in 92, 93, they were without quite a few of their world-famous 80s players, Gordon Greenidge, Malcolm Marshall, Viv Richards, Jeff Dujon. And we thought, we can beat these guys. And we almost did.
Did Lara get 277 in that series?
Yeah, that was at the SCG, yep. That was the third test, which was a draw. So we went into the fourth test at 1-0, and we thought, we got this. But then, obviously, Aussie umpiring screwed us completely in that game for a change. And the
Was it
Darryl
Harper
Hare
and Hare?
decision. Yeah, Darryl
Harper and
Hare.
Hare. Yeah, sounds right.
Yeah, Darryl
Sounds
Hare completely screwed us on the last day. And that was it for the series. After that, it was a steamroll. But going into 95, yeah, the tension was massive. You know, new captain, Mike Taylor, new players that come in and really made their name, like Warne and Slater and McGrath coming in, and Greg Blewett. And,
Matthew
that
Elliott?
series.
That Matthew Elliott era?
Matthew Elliott was a few years later. He was in the following series.
I can't believe we didn't play more, that guy. I mean, fantastic batsman.
Oh, well, being from Victoria, I mean, I love Matthew Elliott. I mean, I saw him in Shield cricket plenty of times at the MCG, and all the talk was, yeah, he's obviously destined. I mean, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when was the general talk. But, you know, it isn't about technique with international sport. You know, it's all about the mental side of things, and that was where he had, you know, much publicised struggles. And, disappointing for Aussie fans because, you know, when he did come good, he was magnificent. Everyone remembers that one pull shot against Alan Donald at the Wanderers in 97.
Oh, yeah, you put that up recently as well, didn't you?
It meant a lot, that one, because Donald was, you know, for those, when you think about it, it's 2020 now, I mean, for those fans who were just kids back then or not even alive back then, I mean, Alan Donald was seriously quick and seriously good. You know, forget the figures on Cricinfo. You're actually watching him bowl all the time. You thought every ball, you're in trouble. And, Elliott walked out there in that first test and just was driving and hooking him. It was, for us Aussie fans, it was a pretty awesome moment, and none of us have ever forgotten that because it was pretty cool. You know, you don't get many out and out express bowlers being dominated in cricket very often, and that was a pretty awesome thing. I mean, we've seen Jofra Archer the last year had a couple of spells where he bowled quick, has definitely tailed off over the last 6 months. But certainly,
probably because he's
first couple
of 1,000 overs. Joe Root's just
that's right. Well, yeah, but everyone saw, you know, him bowling fast in those couple of tests in the Ashes, and it looks scary. And you thought, oh, wow, you know, there's no one hitting it for six over square leg anytime soon here. You know,
yeah, it was literally like Mitchell Johnson in that 2013 series where you felt the raw pace even through the television, didn't you? I mean, you felt the full force of pace, and that was, I mean, even that series, you had Mitchell Johnson just kind of chucking it at Kevin Peterson when he aborted his run-up, and there was some chat there, which was fun.
Yeah, well, I didn't give Mitchell Johnson any chance in that Ashes. I mean, I was tweeting very unsuccessfully at that point during the first test, because there was so much build-up to Johnson before that Ashes. And I thought, man, we've seen this guy. He just bowls pies. The English are right.
To the left, bowls to the right.
Bowls to the left, bowls to the right. Give me a break, you know. And then, his first spell in the first on the first innings against England was average. And I thought, he's done. And then, by the end of the day, end of the day, it was world news. And then after that, the next few tests was crazy. But, that's what was so crazy about the West Indies in the 80s and the early 90s, was that you had 4 Mitchell Johnsons or Jofra Archers. They were all crazy. Ambrose, Walsh, Patrick Patterson, Ian Bishop. I mean, these guys could get 6 for 20 any day. And
they did as well. I think Ambrose did he get 7 for 1 or something crazy like that in a spell, or 5 for 1 or something insane like that?
I don't remember that one at all.
Yeah, well, I'll look it up because I seem to remember he bowled a spell of 5 for 1 against the Aussies. So maybe that's one for you.
7 for 1. Yep, 7 for 1. Okay. I was. Yeah, that was mental. I mean, back in those days where we would literally prepare pitches for the West Indies. I mean, you could not imagine home teams preparing pitches against their own team. Yeah, it's crazy. But that whack a pitch that was absolutely just, Curtly could just wrap it up and take it home. It was unbelievable that, it was created so perfectly and, steamrolled us in 2.5 days.
Rob, we're coming up to an hour, and of course we all enjoy the funny side of sledging, and it brings a little bit of excitement to our game, but it does spill over a little bit a couple of times. And I mean, the two instances that come to mind, as I think you said at the start of your discussion, was the Javed Miandad and Dennis Lilly incident, and of course the infamous Monkey Gate or Markey Gate, depending on which side of the fence you sit. So perhaps we can talk through a little bit of those, a little bit about those two instances. I mean, because this was before I started watching cricket. What triggered the kick by Dennis Lilly to Javed Miandad? Because it's pretty extreme, and Miandad went back at him, nearly hitting him with the bat. So can you talk our listeners and me actually through this incident? Because I've seen videos and I've seen kind of photos of it, but I'm not sure what was going on.
As a lot of Indian fans can probably relate to, Miandad was never short of a word on the field. He was pretty cocky as a youngster, even back, when he started in the late 70s. And, he was certainly no stranger to the Aussies. And Pakistan fans often bring up the fact that Dennis Lilly didn't have a lot of great success in Pakistan. And
this happened in Australia, didn't it? While they were touring.
It happened in Australia, but it was prior to that. Lilly had toured Pakistan in 1980 and obviously done absolutely nothing. And Javed was just always chirpy, and especially when he was batting in particular. And, why wouldn't he have a go at the best bowler in the team? That was his game, that was what he did, The Pakistan team were obviously getting pretty smashed in Australia. They didn't have a great lot of success. Aside from the Imran Khan match at the SCG in 1977, Miandad hadn't scored 100 in Australia and didn't score one until we're in the 78-79 series, where he got 129 not out. But Dennis Lilly didn't play that match. So he'd never really done much against Dennis Lilly at that time. So by the time that Perth match came around, it was obviously a few years later, in 81, Pakistan were getting pretty smashed. I mean, they got bought out for 62 in the first innings, and Lilly got 5 for 18. So, he was just one of these guys who was under the pump. I think it was just a lot of small things. We didn't see any of the previous series in Pakistan on TV, and the previous series that they played in Australia was on ABC, so that was before I was born, or just after I was born, so I was super young too. So, I think you can appreciate that Miandad was one of these guys that didn't take a backward step and was pretty much goading Lilly on the whole time. Especially,
and Lilly had a pretty short fuse himself, didn't he? I mean, he was. He was probably towards the tail end of his career? Was he a little bit slower than he was at his peak by then?
Yeah, that was 81-82 season. So he only had 2 seasons left. So he'd been playing Test cricket for 10 years already. The long hair had gone. The vicious bounces had gone. He was pretty much in that stage of his career where most fast bowlers end up, where they're just really, really clever, leg cutters, off cutters, really working out batsmen. And his stats in that time were pretty awesome. But obviously, 5 for 18 off 9 overs is excellent, and most of them were the top 7 batsmen. So, he was still someone who was pretty awesome at that time.
Yeah, but I think it was the fear of raw pace that maybe had gone, which prompted me on that to.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, Lily wasn't really innocent in the whole situation, was he? Because he kind
No,
of blocked me on that from
of
running,
course.
and he was a rascal himself, so he'd had
Oh, of
plenty of
course.
run-ins over there.
Well, I
And
mean, there's videos everywhere of Dennis Lee. He was just a classic 70s Aussie hot-headed fast bowler. It's funny because I never really liked Dennis Lilly growing up. I was never much of a fan of his. I guess I didn't really understand as a kid the whole, aggro thing against other teams. The bowlers that I liked at that time were like Terry Alderman and some of the controversial bowlers at that time. So yeah, I didn't really care for those guys who are pretty over the top.
right, and of course, the other one that we wanted to speak about was the Sydney Test match of 2008, the famous/infamous test. Where you had Simons and our old friend Harbhajan square off. You had Sachin Tendulkar get involved because he was at the other end. Bhaji's defense, ironically, was that he called Simons a motherfucker.
Yeah,
So
pretty fun.
it's just, I mean, you're just like, wow, that's the defense in Hindi, of course. But yeah, what did you make of all of that? I mean, I think it's probably the right way to wrap the show because that one, I think, went too far, didn't it?
Yeah, it just seemed bizarre to actually see it unfold. I mean, not just the players, but just the pathetic umpiring. And everyone
Yeah,
hates
more
bad
umpiring
umpiring.
gold for your channel.
Oh, well,
Steve
I
Buckner.
mean, yeah, I mean, teams want to beat teams fairly. There's no point beating the best team when there's just terrible umpiring and cheating or whatever. Like, you want to win fair and square. And, umpiring aside, umpiring is always bad. I mean, when is it going to end? I mean, Aussies can't believe how bad the umpiring was in last year's Ashes. I mean, it didn't have any impact, I think, on us winning or losing, but it was just horrendous. Like Joel Wilson what was he doing? You can't believe it. And it was the same. It's the same in so many losing series or controversial series where you just can't believe that these guys make such bad decisions in favour of any team. And some of the shockers that I've put up on my Twitter page, you just can't believe that even exists. Some of these it's just unfathomable that you can watch this and think, oh my God, like these professional players just get sawn off by just these umpires who look like they're just village umpires, just making you think they're not even looking. They're not even looking. It's just unbelievable. And, a guy, I know he gets trashed a lot by Tendulkar fans, but Steve Buckner, it's an unpopular thought, but statement. But he's screwed Australia as much as he screwed everyone else. I mean, he's made such horrendous decisions in the West Indies in '91. Oh, just unbelievably bad decisions. He's made great decisions too, but the bad ones are so bad that they negate any good ones. And it just continued on. And a guy like Tendulkar has been, unfortunately, on the recipient of some pretty horrendous decisions from Buckner. It's just unbelievable. I mean, the Sharjah one where he was caught down the leg side. I mean, there's literally no part of that was out at all, like in anyone's book.
He got another one in the next game as well in the final,
Yep,
LBW
yep,
with the pitching outside
yep.
leg.
Oh,
So
not even close. Not even. How can you say that was definitively 100% out when there was just the most immense doubt that there has ever been in any decision ever? So I think that's what gets that's what gets fans so angry, is that these guys make decisions that where they're thinking it's got to be 100% out, where even on first look, you think, well, that's not even close. And how can it be given out? So yeah, there was some. Yeah, I mean, all teams are guilty of over appealing. Just last few days I've been showing the England-Sri Lanka Test Series in Sri Lanka, where both teams were known afterwards to say, mate, they were just appealing for everything because it was just pot luck what they were going to get. And batsmen were not walking on both sides. They had just no respect for the umpire at all in those tests. So, yeah, you can understand teams appealing when they don't have any real trust that the umpire is actually capable of making the right decision. But, yeah, some series look worse than others, obviously. So, for a series like 2007-8 in Australia, there wasn't a whole lot of bad decisions outside of that Sydney test. I mean, the MCG, the WACA, where India won, and Adelaide was pretty good from memory.
Perth was pretty good, and
there wasn't a lot
I
of
can't
bad
remember
stuff
anything
there.
from the MCG as well. So
there wasn't many bad stuff there. I mean, Zahir Khan bowled Simons on a no ball, which was pretty crucial in that innings. I remember. That one test sort of overshadowed the actual good work the umpires did in the rest of that series. So I think enough has been said over the years about that test. It seemed pretty...
we're not going to add anything new to it. I mean, I think there's an entire podcast that could be devoted to just that test and going through all the decisions and all the chat and the aftermath and the press conferences that came after it. So probably best we let sleeping dogs lie. But Rob, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on this show. It's been over an hour that we've spoken, so thank you so much for your time. It is an absolute treat for cricket lovers everywhere to hear from you. And we'll put the videos in the show notes, guys, so make sure that you check out Rob's channel. Make sure you click on all those videos and spend hours just going down that YouTube cricket rabbit hole. So enjoy, guys. And Rob, do you want to let listeners know where they can find you on Twitter, on YouTube? I don't know whether you're on Instagram, but maybe you can tell them.
I am on Instagram, actually, but I don't do a whole lot on Instagram. But I think my Instagram handle is Rob Moody Guitar, but I don't post much cricket stuff on there. But certainly on YouTube and Twitter, it's just the normal Robelinda 2. So Rob and Belinda together, minus a double B in the middle. So just Robelinda 2 on Twitter and YouTube. That's where you can find me and all the videos. And feel free to come and say hello and request some matches because I got a lot of footage.
Fantastic. And Rob, before you go, can I just check what happened to Robelinda 1? Did you get locked out of that?
No, it still exists.
So you got that one as well?
Yeah. So it's without the 1. It's just Robelinda. I made that one first. And what happened was I got a couple of copyright strikes. So 3 actually, and it got shut down. I started in about 2006 or 7, not for cricket, for music stuff. And initially I did upload some cricket on it, but it got shut down. And so I started the second channel. And then after a few months of the second channel existing, the copyright strikes got lifted from the first channel and all the videos were still there. So it still exists. But there'd been enough traction on the new channel that I decided to leave the old one alone. So it's still there as well.
Incredible. So you learn something new every day. Rob, as I said, pleasure to have you on the show and hope to have you back soon. Take care and stay safe during this lockdown. And we'll speak to you soon.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
Do you wish you were smarter? Well, so do we. But the next best thing?
We could make you sound smarter.
And to help you with this endeavor, we are Simplified, a podcast that attempts to break down the complex world around you with a little knowledge, a lot of poor jokes, and a ton of random trivia.
Episodes out every Monday.
On the IVM Podcast app or wherever you get your podcasts.
See ya!
Look! Up in the internet! It's a meme! No! It's a cat video! No! It's the Geek Fruit Podcast!
That's right. We interrupt this riveting broadcast to tell you about our show, The Geek Fruit Podcast, where Tejas, Dinkar, and I, Jishnu, talk about everything in pop culture, including DC, Marvel, Star Wars, Netflix, and everything in between.
You know how your friends hate it when you ramble about some nerdy crap and you just want somebody to listen to you? Well, sorry, there's nothing we can do about that, but come listen to us ramble and it'll almost be like the real thing. Kind of.
Listen to new episodes of the Geek Fruit Podcast every Monday and the Geek Fruit Bulletin every Thursday on iTunes, Google Podcasts, the IVM app, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Happy listening, you nerds.